Okay, why is everything so expensive? I mean, the cost of living is out of control. I'm just going to talk to you about this one. Just have a conversation between you and me. I've been looking at quite a few different things over the past several years, like my home insurance, my car insurance. It's just gone up. Both. In fact, I was looking at some stats here recently. It seems like car insurance, I believe it was in 2023, went up 23%, and home insurance in 2024, 25%. And so these costs have just been going up and up. How about groceries? Have you been to the grocery store lately and looked at the prices and how things have gone up? There's even this, I think it's called shrinkflation, where the cost of the item is the same, but there's less product in the item. For instance, you have some chips, and the bag looks like it's the same size, but what's inside the bag is less. There's less product in there, but you're paying the same price or more for less product. And so there's several different things out there that are just costing more. I'm walking by some homes right now. There's a home right here. Home prices have just skyrocketed, from 2020, 2021 all the way till now. The average home now is $400,000. The average car is about $45,000, $47,000. Let's go back to homes, okay? Because that's a big one for people in general. In fact, I feel a lot for younger people or anyone who's trying to get into a home now. You have homes with that average price of $400,000. Think about this, okay? If the average price of a home is about $400,000, and we have interest rates now in that 7% range on a 30-year fixed mortgage, that means that the mortgage price or the monthly cost of the mortgage is about $2,500 to $3,000 per month, maybe even a little bit more than $3,000. But let's use that $2,500 number just to make the math easy for me. So if you have a mortgage payment of $2,500 a month, the smart thing to do is to keep that mortgage about 25% or less of your gross income. I even take that to now, because of all of the pressures that we have, to keep that to 25% of your actual take-home pay, okay? But most people don't do that. Most people don't keep it right there at that 25%. But let's just say that you did that. You're going to be smart about your home purchase and keep it to 25% of your take-home pay. Well, let's use that $2,500 number. So your mortgage is $2,500 a month, and you're keeping that to 1/4 of your take-home pay. That means that you need to be bringing home 4 times $2,500 per month. So you take $2,500 times 4, that's $10,000 a month worth of take-home income that you need to have. You take 10,000 times 12, because that's a year. That means that you need to be bringing home, take-home pay, $120,000 a year. Now let me ask you, do you have $120,000 worth of take-home pay? The average household income here in America is in that $75,000 to $100,000 range, okay? That's household income. That may be 2 incomes, okay? Now, if you're bringing home $120,000 worth of take-home pay, well, congratulations. You're above the average. But you think about you. What are you bringing home? Okay? And if you're spending more than 25% on your mortgage, then, some are getting in that 30, 40, even bumping close to that 50% range. That means that you're house poor. That means that your house is costing you so much that you're squeezed in your budget. Let's go to cars, okay? Consumers are purchasing cars. You probably have a car payment. And the average is in that $700 to $1,000 a month for a car payment. Again, that's crazy. That's just, but a lot of people are doing that, okay? And these cars, like I said, at $47,000, it's getting really, really tough. So we talked about homes, cars, groceries. In fact, I was reading this survey. There was this survey. I don't remember what organization or a company did it, but they surveyed 2,000 people about the cost of groceries. And 88% of those surveyed were frustrated or irritated with the price and the cost of groceries. People are feeling the squeeze. And I think about it, the middle class are really feeling the squeeze. Let's use that income number of $100,000 a year. In many places, I think that would put you in the middle class. Well, that middle class is feeling the squeeze. They're feeling the squeeze of home payments, their mortgage payment. They're feeling the squeeze of these car payments that they may have. They're feeling the squeeze of grocery prices getting higher. They're feeling the squeeze of their insurance prices getting higher for their home insurance, their car insurance. And then you have what's going on in the atmosphere, playing on the psychology of the middle class. You have all these layoffs going on. You have the DOGE organization now in the government that is just taking drastic cuts, eliminating jobs for these federal workers. The average income of the federal worker or a federal worker's household, whether it's one income or two incomes, is at about that $100,000. Now, some might say, I don't work for the federal government. I don't know anybody in my family or friends that work in the federal government. But think about this. There can be a roundabout effect of federal workers losing jobs en masse. It can affect you indirectly, okay? Because that represents a person who participates in this economy, okay? Let's say that a federal worker loses their job and in their household, let's use the example that there's two federal workers in a household. Each one is earning $50,000 a year, $100,000 collectively. So their household income is $100,000. What do you think they do with that $100,000? They participate in the economy. They're buying things. They're buying homes. They're buying cars. They're buying the essentials that they need on a daily basis. They're going to the grocery store and buying groceries. They may be buying some things for their homes, televisions, cell phones, and things like that. So that person, at least immediately from the time that the DOGE organization cut their job all the way till they find another job, they're not participating in the economy anymore. In fact, they're probably devastated. They may not be able to truly participate in the economy for some time, 6 months, a year, or more. So they're not buying those products. And guess what? You're probably employed by an employer that they were the customer of at some point. And even if you live in another state or another area or whatever from where they live, the corporation or whoever you work for is not receiving the revenue from that federal worker. So if they're losing enough money over time, then it could visit you in hours cut at your job, or layoffs at your job due to that not being infused in the economy, that federal workers' dollars not being infused in the economy. Now, I think about what's going on with this DOGE organization, okay? And politics are always kind of a touchy subject, okay? And so there's folks on kind of one side or the other side of the equation on what the federal government should be doing. Well, let me give you some stats just about our country, okay? We spend about $7 trillion a year in our budget. It's hard to wrap my mind sometimes around even $1 trillion. I think for most people, it's very, very hard to do. I did a video in the past. I hope that I'm getting this math right. But if you were to spend $1 million a day, it would take you 2,700 years to spend $1 trillion. $1 million a day. Again, I'll say it again. If you spent $1 million a day, it would take you 2,700 years to spend $1 trillion. So hopefully that gives you some understanding. $7 trillion is a lot of money. That's what the government is spending annually. Now, what do we bring in through taxes? Because the federal government, to spend anything, has to take in taxes, okay? Well, we're bringing in, from you and me, about $5 trillion. What does that mean? That means that we're deficit spending. The federal government is spending $2 trillion more annually than what it's bringing in. Now think about this. If that was your household and you're spending more than what you're bringing in, that's unsustainable. That's not a good thing, all right? And so people who want to get the government to balance its budget and to live within its means, I believe that's a reasonable ask, okay? However, okay, we've come to this situation over many, many years. And it seems that the DOGE organization is really cutting things fast. They're going in there and they're just chopping, okay? And, you know, I think about even Elon Musk, who's the head of the DOGE organization. At some conference or something, he came out with a chainsaw, and he was wielding that chainsaw and saying, this is the you know, kind of DOGE chainsaw, and cutting these programs and things that are wasteful spending in government. But in my opinion, when you're dealing with a situation where, one, you've got consumer sentiment that is at an all-time low. You have people who are at the end of their rope. And a lot of these people, like I said, are those middle-class folks, $75,000 to $100,000 a year. They're hanging on by a thin thread. If the financial wind blows, they're going to get taken, okay? If any little thing happens in their life, like I said, they're at the end of their rope. That rope is going to snap if one thing happens. The last statistic I read is about 25% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck, okay? So as this DOGE organization is going in and looking at and analyzing things, which I think it's reasonable to do that and to make cuts and hopefully bring us to a point over time that we have a balanced budget and we aren't deficit spending to the tune of $2 trillion. But I think it's smarter to go after that with a scalpel, not a chainsaw. Think about it. If you're doing surgery on someone and you're a surgeon, you're going to use a scalpel. You're going to use a precision instrument. You aren't going to go in there with a chainsaw. To use another analogy, I think about that Jenga game. Have you ever played Jenga? Where you build that tower with those blocks, okay? You build the tower all the way up. And that's kind of what's happened with our economy and how things are set up, and this whole deficit spending that the government is doing. It's happened over years and years and years. It's as if you've been playing that Jenga game for a while and you've built up that tower. And if you've ever played Jenga, you know you kind of pull out a block and then you set that block on top of the tower, okay? And you do that over and over again, okay? And if you pull a block out and the tower falls down, you're out of the game. You've lost, okay? And it seems to me that kind of what Doge is doing, at least at the time of the recording of this video, is they're just pulling blocks out of there. They aren't carefully going and touching the block to see if it's loose enough to pull out and to do that careful, meticulous, more precisioned operation to where you can win that Jenga game by not collapsing the tower. Because just like I used with that analogy of the middle class being at the end of their rope, 25% of people here in America living paycheck to paycheck, being at the end of the rope. It's not like that Jenga tower is just barely standing and you just go ahead and pull out a block almost indiscriminately. I think that's dangerous and can collapse things, okay? Think about yourself. Here recently, I was watching something on the news where one of the government officials was saying there's going to be a transition period, that we might have some pain. The president himself was saying that we may have a short-term pain. I forget exactly how he put it, but the bottom line is that we're going to have to endure some turbulence in the economy. It's basically what the president is saying. So you need to be able to absorb that punch of the economy. Here's my question to you. Can you absorb it? Are you in a situation where you can absorb the punch? Okay? I'm afraid that a lot of people are not in the position to absorb anything. If the wind blows economically, something happens to you, with all of the things that are going on out there, layoffs, prices going up, companies having all sorts of challenges. I haven't even talked about the tariffs. We've had all of these tariffs. And the bottom line, I won't go through all of the particulars, but in the end, tariffs mean that prices on the shelf are gonna go up. That's what they mean for you and for me, bottom line. Can you absorb that in your budget? Most people cannot. And so as I wrap up this video, what I'm telling you is now is not the time to be an ostrich with your head in the sand and not looking at your personal finance situation and actually shoring things up. It is not the time to go out and buy a new car. It's the time to buy a car that you can afford. If that's a $5,000 car, buy a $5,000 car, period. Okay? If your home is more than 25%, we'll say of your gross income. I prefer to tell you of your take-home income. If your housing, whether you rent or you're buying a house, is more than 25%, it's time to look at that. Can you do something different? Figure it out. Do something different. All right? With your housing. What about just basic things like clothing? It is not the time to be so concerned about having Gucci or Armani or whatever it is that is this designer clothing. It's not the time for that, okay? Maybe it's time to go to the local thrift shop and get your clothing if you need to, okay? or at least look for bargain clothes. Buy them at the big box retailers. Some of those have clothes now. My point on it is it is not the time to be trying to impress anybody with your things. It's time to get your financial house in order, okay? So do the basics. I always talk about the basics. Start with step number 1. Make sure that you have a $2,000 emergency fund somewhere like a high yield savings account. And this video is running long, so I'm not going to go through all of the steps. But we're dealing with a challenge now. It is time to get your finances in order. Don't worry about spending on this stuff. Get yourself in order. We're feeling that squeeze. Prepare yourself financially to where you have room in your budget to react to what's going on out there. Now, if you've received some value from this video, I would ask you to go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. Also, subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so that you know when I actually upload another video. Again, thank you for joining me on this walk. Good luck. I'm rooting for you. Thanks for listening.